Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Scott Spears Now. Today, we go international on Scott Spears Now as we head to London, England to interview Bud Collins, tennis great, tennis legend, as he is at tennis's biggest event, Wimbledon. We're going to talk to Bud about his 50-year career in broadcasting, receiving a Hall of Fame ring while he was over at Wimbledon, and who's going to win the tournament? We're going to find out on this episode of Scott Spears Now International. This is Scott Spears, and without question the most famous tournament in tennis is Wimbledon. And this year, after a 77-year drought for British players, Andy Murray has taken the crown and ended the drought. Joining us live from London, England, is the Dean of Tennis Journalist, Broadcast and Written, celebrating 50 years in broadcasting and 50 years with the Boston Globe, Bud Collins. Bud, you're looking great. We're international.
Well, thank you very much. I'm actually now at Tennis Channel. I spent most of my life with the Boston Globe, but no longer.
Well, that's okay. Change is okay.
I hope so.
Bud, first thing I have to ask you is, did you have the strawberry pants on today?
Yes, I did. I did a little bit show-offy, but I wear them every year, the last day of Wimbledon, and the men's final. And I usually get on one other pair, similar, but that's the one that everybody likes, the strawberries, which is emblematic of Wimbledon. Strawberries, no cream spilled this time. Good, that's fine. But I did tell you once, I think, that these trousers came from not England, but from Italy. And we were walking down a street, and my wife and I, Anita, saw we were passing a store window at a upholstery store, and she said, "I like those as your Wimbledon trousers." So we went into the store. I don't speak very much Italian, but when I told them what I wanted for trousers, they thought I was wacky. And I said, "Just give me the measurements," which I had to do. And then I took the cloth and brought it to Wimbledon and had it tailored in Wimbledon.
And what a great tradition that has become. Bud, last year you weren't able to come to Wimbledon, down with an injury. What's it like to be back this year?
Well, it's great to be back. I'm perfectly healthy except for my left leg, and that'll get straightened out one of these days, I hope. But I'm able to get around on a cane and not liking it very much. But to be at Wimbledon was something I'd made up my mind with my wife that we had to go. You've been going for 50 years. Why keep it up? Why not keep it up? So here we are in good old England. It's very light, and it's just, when I think of you, I think, does he have any tennis fans in the background or any tennis people that I was trying to think of any players from Ohio. There haven't been too many, but two very good ones. Tony Trabert, who wound up at the University of Cincinnati, and he followed Billy Talbot, who went to Cincinnati. So they were both in the Hall of Fame, and the Tennis Hall of Fame. So I hope we get some more Ohioans playing tennis. There were a couple of the female players who I'm ashamed to say I can't remember them. Well, one was Gwyneth Thomas. That was her name. She's no longer alive, but she was a very good top 10 American player.
You know, and Bud, it's been amazing this year. We might not have a whole lot of people from Ohio playing tennis, but boy, we were watching this year, because this tournament has been great and culminated today with Andy Murray ending that 77-year drought for British players. What was it like watching that game, Bud?
Well, it was terrific. I thought the other guy was going to win, Djokovic, but Murray outplayed him, and they had some magnificent cross-court scrimmages, and Usually Djokovic would win those, but he didn't today. It was Andy Murray keeping the ball moving and finally get an error from Djokovic. So Djokovic will be roaring back at the U.S. Open, I'm sure, as will Andy Murray, who won that one last year. And people are, or have said to me, oh, what's the fuss about this guy winning a tennis match? He won the U.S. Open in last year, and he won the Olympic gold medal. Well, the thing was, it was Wimbledon. He had not crossed that line, which means you're a Wimbledon champion. It doesn't matter where you stand on the computer rankings. You've got to win Wimbledon in the judgment of people who follow the game and the players themselves. And Wimbledon is the one to be won. And so I thought Djokovic would win it. He did not. He was almost run out of town. And he was very gracious about it. He said the good man won, and I couldn't keep up with him, and that was the case. But when the U.S. Open comes around, it's a different ball game, and I think Djokovic will be right at the top. But now we go in here with Andy Murray, and Andy was kind of a difficult kid as he was coming up. He was getting a lot of attention because Britain loves tennis, but nobody comes out to watch too much. And so here was Andy Murray, who had some prospects at a junior, and people were anxious for him to succeed, and they paid him a lot of money, and I think he got spoiled at the beginning of his career, and he was a little difficult to get along with. That's all gone. He had tremendous help from Ivan Lendl, the old champion who didn't win Wimbledon, came to second a couple of times, but Lendl laid down the law to him. You're not going to win this tournament the way you're acting. You're not in shape. You're not really helping yourself. And that got through to Murray. And that, obviously, it showed in this tournament when he went right through Wimbledon. And it was great to watch.
You know, and the odds makers even had this right to a certain extent, Bud. Early in the week, I checked on this, and they had Djokovic seeded 1 and Murray 2, and that's the way we ended up.
That's right. One the other way around.
Yeah.
With Djokovic is 1 and Murray is 2, and I believe they will change those positions now in the next computer rankings.
And it's been amazing for Britain. I checked on this. 1936, Fred Perry, the last time a male from Britain has won that. What a great victory for that country.
Well, it was people had given up, I think. I knew Fred Perry and had dinner with him a couple of nights before he died in Melbourne, Australia. And he was getting a little... at first, he was hoping people would break that record of stress. 77 games, or 77. But when he left, in those days, tennis was different, of course, because it was professional tennis that came along in 1968. And Fred, by that time, was finished with his playing career, but he was still coaching, and he was still on television and radio. A very terrific guy he was. And I did some work with him on television and radio at Wimbledon and in Davis Cup. And he just was hoping that someone, he wasn't a guy who has a record and doesn't want to see it broken at all. Fred, because he was the heart of British tennis in those days, in the 1930s, he wanted a successor, and it didn't look like he was going to have a successor. I remember one of the last times I talked to him was, it was sort of a joke, but not quite a joke, because it was going on for a long time. And so every year, when I would show up at Wimbledon to cover the tournament, I would say to Fred, is this the year? Is this the year that a guy breaks through? And Fred said, well, I don't think so. He said, I'm wondering if I'm ever going to see it. And he said that he didn't feel too well, and he looked at me and he says, "You don't look too good either." So we had a little fun tossing it around.
You know, and Bud, the men's tournament we're talking a lot about here because it was just this afternoon, but in contrast, the women's tournament was all over the place. The odds makers had Serena Williams, of course, seeded to win, and Victoria Azarenka seeded second. Now, a tragedy bestruck Victoria early on, hurt herself in the first match out there, took
That's
her
right,
out.
yeah.
And Serena taken out in the fourth round, and we get Marion Bertoli as our champion. What did you make of the women, Bud?
Well, I like the women this year. I have mixed emotions about the women because I think they play too much baseline tennis and it's just back and forth. But there was a sensational semifinal. Well, first of all, I should say that this is the most unpredictable Wimbledon that has ever occurred. The tournament goes back to 1877, and there was, by the end of the second day, 7 top-seeded players were removed. And the favorites were just flying all over the place, as you mentioned, Serena Williams, who everybody thought would win easily, and she didn't. She lost to Sabina Lusicki, a German, Sabina, and she and a little kid who I never used to like to watch, but finally I did, and she played a great match in Radwanska, a Polish player, and she and Sabina, I think, produced the best match of the tournament. Naturally, they don't do the ball as hard, but they really showed me a lot. And Radwanska lost barely in 3 sets, and that put the German Sabina in there. And what could happen? But Sabina fell apart in the final. I never saw a good player fall apart as she did, and she admitted she was certainly. She didn't know what to do out there on the tennis court. She won the first game of their match that she was playing with Marion Bartoli, a French kid who plays strange-looking tennis, but I like to watch her because you never know what she's going to do next. And so in that final, in which Sabina was the favorite, of course, having beaten Venus Williams, she only got a couple of games. And there was the French kid who has 2 hands on the forehand, 2 hands on the backhand, and she plays like she's got 2 heads. And she just wiped out Sabina with an ace on match point. And she said there could never be anything as meaningful as you're facing a match point in your corner, and you've already blown 3 match points, and here they are moving towards Sabina recovering perhaps. So that last point was an ace from the racket of Bartoli, and she said it was such a wonderful feeling to see the chalk puff up in the corner of the court, which signified that nobody was going to return it, and it was an ace. But the women did very much, but like any place else, women's tennis is not quite as terrific as the men's, but it's getting better. And the men's today with Rory was awfully good tennis. Now, when they meet again, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't think Djokovic, who's a magnificent player, was up to speed, but he'd gone through a tough semifinal himself of 5 hours with Nadal. So Del Potro, who's an Argentine and has been out with injuries for a long time. She did win the U.S. Open 3 years ago. So it was a wonderful tournament and a wonderful feeling by the people that were probably 14,000, something like that, in the stands. And then there were many, many standing on what they call Henman Hill. And they just were anxious for any kind of a showing by excuse me, I got lost a little bit there. The guys who Murray had been beating were tough guys, and he had long matches. And I thought that might take its toll, but no, she was ready. Yeah. She was ready. It's 77, the street. And it went to the 7th day of the 7th month and 77 failures.
Well, Bud, before I let you out of here, and it's been an amazing time for tennis, that's for sure. This trip was kind of special for you for a reason. I hope people will know. In your 50th year doing the broadcasting biz, you were inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame in '94, but you got your ring. You were presented with your Hall of Fame ring on this trip. What was that like, Bud?
Well, I was very pleasant. Can I show it to you?
Yeah, go right ahead. Oh, look at that.
Beautiful ring.
Beautiful.
I had no idea. I knew I was in the Hall of Fame in 1994 before the rings came along. And so I really wasn't aware that a ring was going to be presented. It was presented here at the Wimbledon tournament. So that was a kick for me. I was at Tennis Channel when I sort of shepherded a group going through the ring ceremony, and so it was great fun. Martina Navratilova was there, and a lot of the good players. So it made me feel very good. Now I'm in the Hall of Fame. I don't think they can throw me out, but you never know.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. But wrapping up question here, parting question. Being back at Wimbledon, being in the mix of it, why has this game meant so much to you for so many years, half a century?
Well, I've enjoyed it. It's fun. And I guess when I first started hitting tennis balls as a kid in Berea.
Well, Bud, I tell you what, I cannot thank you enough for coming international with us on this very special day, Wimbledon wrap-up with Andy Murray, ending that 77-year streak. It's been a pleasure. You're one of my favorites, a fellow Ohioan. Always good to speak with you, Bud, and I hope we'll speak again.
Thanks, Scott. We will see it again, and you'll see what happens in the rest of this Wimbledon. I guess it's over. Yeah, there's nothing more to go.
There'll be a lot of coverage, yes.
But the Open tennis in where's the next Open? New York. There it is. How could I forget New York? It's a pretty great town. So that's where the show moves. There's some tennis tournaments in between. Cincinnati, for one. So your listeners will want to be there.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Scott.
But you have a safe trip home. Thank you so much. I certainly hope you've enjoyed this episode of Scott Spears Now. We hopped the pond over to London, England. Amazing things you can do now in the world of Skype. Bud Collins, always one of my favorite broadcasting people, one of my favorite guests. The pants, the voice, he certainly is a legend. But we've got to get out of here, so until next time, this is Scott Spears, heading for the dugout.